whether we're looking at the word timelines in terms of a metaphorical sense or a, legit metaphysical sense, it doesn't really matter for the point that I'm trying to make here. And that is that the way to completely shift our experience of life is it's multi-leveled. The first level being we have to shift our perception of who we are and how we fit into life. So when we think about, either a social setting or we think about the type of person we are and who we're capable of, we have a narrative that we're telling ourselves. Just like a book tells you a story about a certain character, your mind tells you a story about who you are. And the first level to sort of shifting timelines in that way is changing the perception of who you are. We're going to change the character that we associate with our story. So all of a sudden, life can be much, much different and much more grand than you ever thought it could be, simply because you're changing your self of perception. And you could even get intoxicated in the sense of your ability to change, because when you're about to make a radical decision that goes against the grain of your fear, that goes against your comfort zone and makes you sort of have to level up. And if you don't level up, you're going to just kick yourself for not trying. You feel your heart beating, you feel yourself sweating, you feel your body shaking, and yet you still do it. That's the initiation. So in changing our self-perception, that's the sort of level one of it all. In changing our self-perception, you are initiated into a new way of being in which you can completely alter your life circumstances. And anyone who has done, really great things, anyone who has done, you know, anything successfully creative or in any sense of the world and in any sense of the word, they have realized this fact, whether unconsciously or consciously. They have realized that the people that they once looked up to, the people that they watched on the TV, the people that they listened to all the time, they are no different than them, and that they have the same inherent ability that they do. And it's all about shifting our perception and going through the many initiations that are disguised as emotional turmoil and fear. Fear is like the guardian that's holding the key to the life that you want and to being the person that you want. You don't have to even think about anything logically. You don't have to think about any ways around it. You just have to be willing to face the shaking of the body, to face the nerves, to face the sweating, to face the nausea, whatever may come about as a result of you trying to change who you are and change your life. You have to be willing to bear the discomfort of that initiation into that life. Hopefully that makes sense. And level two is that we're actually changing our very unconscious ability to do things. So first we changed our self-perception. And in changing our self-perception, we are forced to sit with the discomfort of initiating ourselves into a new way of being. And in number two, we're actually changing the unconscious programming that is playing in the background of our mind. When you make a radical choice like that, all of a sudden, the brain goes, what's happening? This is different. This is new. This isn't according to the program. What's happening? We have to adjust. We have to change who we believe this person is, and we have to match that so we can properly support them in their evolution and, quote unquote survival, because that's how the brain kind of operates. And now the more you make these radical choices that are, not in line with the quote unquote script, you break through and your mind is now saying to itself, huh, this person is different than the set script that we had that created that identity for this person. Our human, I'm speaking from the brain's perspective, is making choices that align with a different person. So we need to quickly figure out who that identity is, and we need to support that identity so that they can thrive and they can survive in life. This is where neuroplasticity comes into play, of course, which I talk about all the time. And you're going to find yourself, as a result of those radical choices, you're going to find yourself naturally more confident, more present, more charismatic, less anxious, less fearful. Because a lot of people think that the only part of healing is the gentle sitting with nature of anxiety, of fear, and recognizing and noticing patterns. That's what makes you aware of the destruction. That's what makes you aware of the deep hole that you're in. But to actually break through, to change the very nature of the reality you're experiencing, you have to make radical choices that only a version of you who is different than the past version of you would make. And you can even think about it. The future version of you that is confident, that is comfortable in their skin, that is present, that is relaxed. What kind of choices do they make that you are afraid to make right now? You can write them down, you could think of them, whatever it may be. And what you might notice is there is some distance between you and the version of yourself that can make those actions. And maybe it might not even feel like you because you've never associated yourself with the capability and ability to take those radical choices. But that's where the initiation comes in. It's like a mirror. The objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. Is that how it goes? I don't know. It's the opposite, though. The distance between you and the version of yourself that can make those radical choices, it's significantly closer than it actually looks. The distance is an illusion. There is no distance. It doesn't exist. That's the breakthrough. That's the thing that actually changes your life is you realize that every person that you see on TV, that you look up to, that you listen to, it's not that they were born completely different. It's that they realized actions come first before identity and before reality change. Actions are the first step. A radical choice is the first step. And we can even have fun with this and we can think about it in terms of reality. The law of attraction says that you attract what you are. And if we want to follow that baseline, which we can just entertain it, it makes complete sense that a radical choice would completely change the feedback that reality is giving you. When you make a radical choice, it carries a significant energy, it carries bravery, it carries willingness, it carries motivation, all of these positive emotions that you're associating and that you're transactionally um, trading with the discomfort of fear. Because that's what it is. You're telling the universe, you're telling your reality, you're saying, here is my best effort. Here is me willing to face all my fears. Here is me breaking through my comfort. Here is me doing this thing while nervous, while scared, while shaking. And in exchange, I want to see what you have to give. In exchange of all of that, I'm willing to feel the discomfort. I leave the rest to you. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep making radical choices. And I'm going to keep an open mind to see how does reality respond to those choices. What you're going to find is it does respond. Reality, the universe, does respond. It responds interestingly. And the response is not always what you think it's going to be. If we keep waiting for reality to respond with a certain sign, so we say like, you know, we're waiting for the sign to be a blue bird is going to land on our window. It's almost like the cosmic joke, whereas a blue bird is never going to land on your window. But maybe, you'll see a blue bird in a window in a different form. Does that make sense? You might see it like in your computer. You might listen to a band named Blue Bird, and the hook is they're singing about moving through the window or whatever it may be. This is the kind of synchronistic, I guess, quote unquote, more spiritual approach that I notice when we make radical choices and that we move into a different timeline. You can always tell something is happening around you. The energy of your outer life is being influenced by your choices because things like that start to happen. Synchronicities that make almost no sense, but almost perfect sense at the same time start to happen. And I want to be very careful when I say this. This isn't meant to drive you further in the spiritual standpoint. I personally do not care how far, quote unquote, spiritual I am or you are or who anybody else is. When I'm saying we're switching timelines, I mean that practically. I'm only entertaining the metaphysical point of view so that we can add a little bit of, metaphors to the situation. I don't know the nature of synchronicity. I don't know how outer consciousness and inner consciousness is relating. I don't know any of that. But I do know practically that when you make different choices, you are changing your mind's perception of who you are. And not only that, for some reason or the next, reality responds in a weird way. Suddenly, opportunities are right in front of you where they would have never have been. And you can't help but think that this opportunity now is only presenting itself because of the choice that you made a couple of days ago or a couple of weeks ago, whatever it may be, to go past your limits, to go past your comfort zone. Or maybe we can even get a little bit crazier with it. We can say that you were only pulling in certain experiences because of the newfound confidence, charisma, and presence that you have now as a result of leaving that comfort zone. We can look at it in many different ways. We can define a new timeline in many different ways. None of it negates the fact that there is something special happening when we decide to make a radical choice that the old version of us would never make. Let's bring this back down to baseline a little bit. Let's ground this idea in reality just a tiny bit. Emotionally, there's going to be an exhilaration that you feel, right? Right before you do something that's out of your comfort zone, right before you put yourself out there, right before you go against your fears, whatever it may be, your heart might be beating really fast. You might be sweating. You might stutter a little bit. None of that is important. None of it. You aren't supposed to solve any of those like some sort of checklist. You don't have to solve the beating heart. You don't have to solve the subtle stutter. You don't have to solve the sweating. You have to let it be and still move through in trying your best anyway. And what you will notice is all those other things, all those symptoms that are a result of facing your fears and leaving your comfort zone, they will slowly start to diminish the more that you do it. And how, kind of crazy does that sound? That eventually, with repetition, we can even feel comfortable taking the actions that we never thought we were capable of. We can feel the same amount of comfort talking to our best friend that we could talking to strangers because we've done it so many times. We've repeated it so many times, our nervous system is no longer alerted at the fact that we're doing it. And it's less about the immediate results. If you're going into this expecting immediate results, you can't expect immediate results in anything. The quickest results you're going to get is the inner emotional sense from facing your fears, from leaving your comfort zone, because there's going to be a direct correlation between the exhilaration and adrenaline that you feel right before and the sort of, oh my God, I did it afterwards. And when you're looking at yourself and you say, I did it, it almost starts to feel distant again because now it's past you who did it. But you have to realize this present version of yourself, no matter the circumstances, is capable of absolutely anything. No matter how you're dressed, no matter how you feel, no matter how you look, no matter what mood you're in, you are always capable. All that outer layer stuff is self-perception. It's self-perception. It's self-inflicted limitations. It's okay to admit that we're not in the mood, one day to do something out of our comfort zone to make a radical choice. That's okay. We don't always have to be in the mood. But if we're not in the mood every single day, that's when we start to have to notice a pattern and see that, okay, this isn't a mood thing anymore. This isn't a some days I feel like it, some days I don't. I'm really not allowing myself to move through my fear here. And that's usually what happens. It's often less about, being in the right mood, being in the right circumstances, because I'm sure you've been presented with certain circumstances where you didn't act and then you look back at it and you say, damn, I kicked myself for not going out of my comfort zone. I kicked myself for not facing my fears. Who knows what opportunities could have been presented as a result of it. So don't wait to be in the right mood. Don't wait until you feel like it. Don't wait until all the boxes are checked. Actually, I invite you to do the opposite. Precisely when you don't feel like it, precisely when you don't feel like you look, the most confident, precisely when you don't have the most energy, that's when you do it. That's exactly when you do it. Because it's going to feel so shitty and it's going to feel so uncomfortable. But if you could do it then any lighter state of being, you could do it even greater. It's going to feel even easier. The first time doing anything is going to be the worst. But the more you experience, you keep experiencing, you keep repeating, you keep exposing yourself, things get easier. You get better at literally living life the more you do these things. The more you leave your comfort zone, the more you face your fears, the more you make these radical choices that only a version of yourself that is, the one that you truly want to be would make, the more you actually become that version of yourself. And there's not going to be a crazy shift in, self-perception right away. You're just going to slowly start to see that things aren't as big of a deal as you made them out to be in your mind. You're going to slowly start to see that those walls of fear that were built up in your mind weren't really all that big. Things weren't really all that serious. Things weren't really all that big of a deal. It's our mind that creates a storm, a war, where there is really just practical repetitions, leaving our comfort zone, facing our fears. These things are meant to seem like such big deals in our mind. And I know even when I talk about it, it sounds like this whole rescue mission, this mission impossible thing that we have to do. But it's really not. More than anything else, it's us just starting to see that things aren't as crazy as we thought they were. Things aren't as far-fetched. Things aren't as unreachable as we once thought they were. Once you actually start climbing, the people at the top of the mountain don't seem all so different from you. And when you talk to them, they tell you very similar stories. They'll say that when they first started climbing that mountain, that it seemed impossible. It was so uncomfortable and their body was shaking and they didn't think they could do it. And that the people at the top looked so far away. And of course, this is a metaphor for the people that we look up to, the people that we admire and want to be like, and we want ourselves to be like. There's an unconscious wanting to have the traits of the people that we admire, the personality traits. And I believe that somewhere deep in our unconscious, it's because we already possess the ability to embody those traits. That's why we seek them so desirably. Why do some people want to be extremely ambitious and stern and, by the book and whatever else, and they seek to be more like that? And why do others seek to be more relaxed, more cool, more like suave? I don't know. That's a wild word to use in that situation, but you know, why do some people seek certain qualities that they look up to, that they admire, and why do others seek different ones? It's because our alignment, becoming the version of ourselves that we want to become, it's not the same for everyone. And whatever makes us feel inner freedom, whatever regulates us emotionally, makes us feel peace, makes us feel confident, that's what we should seek to be. We shouldn't accept less. We shouldn't accept the cards that we're dealt and try to fit into some sort of archetype that maneuvers around our fears and anxieties and, plays it safe in a way where we're being a version of ourselves, maybe not the version of ourselves that we want to be, but it's okay because we negotiated with fear and anxiety enough to the point where this is good enough. Don't settle for good enough. Make a radical choice that shows reality you won't settle for good enough and that you'll keep getting back up. You'll keep trying until that good enough turns into this is everything I've ever wanted. And then, of course, we can detach from it all. That's a different video. But until then, until that moment where we truly feel fulfilled, and this doesn't mean enlightenment, this doesn't mean worldly possessions. This just means practically the things that we've been looking for in life. It is only right that we first experience them before we create a perception of any sort of, you know, spiritual meaning towards them, in a way, I guess. It's only us here. It's only our relationship with ourselves. You don't have to overcome the world. You don't have to go and solve every fear that you have. You don't have to go and logically disprove every anxiety that you have. You just have to be brave enough to live life and allow your experiences to navigate and basically forge you in a way in which you're becoming your best self constantly. And when I mean best, I mean inner. This has nothing to do with, outer and external things. That's all fun, but that's all an accoutrement to the whole thing. Because the real process is an inner journey. It's an inner emotional freedom and regulation. It's an inner confidence. It's an inner presence. That's what we're searching for. And everything else is experiencing ourselves in the other external things. So in a meaningful relationship with another, we experience them, of course, but we also experience ourselves as a result of them, which is quite profound because we would have never been able to experience ourselves with that person and the way they make us feel, or we would have never been able to experience ourselves in that job or in that path or in that environment. So we're experiencing ourselves as a result of the external. That's what we have to pay attention to. And we always have to be aware of how our inner is changing as a result of these different things. So when you want to make a radical choice, the external is a representation of what's going on inside you. So if it makes you nervous, if it makes you scared, if it makes your body shaking, your heart pound, all that stuff, that's exactly what you need to do. Because as a result of that action, it directly ties to your inner ability to overcome those emotions that you've been struggling with. So make a radical choice, move into a different timeline. In any way in which you perceive that, it will occur anyway, because your best interest is solely dependent on your willingness to go beyond the limitations that you've set for yourself. that's it for today's video, guys. I'm gonna link my book down in the description. I talk about stuff like this and much more if you guys are interested in that. But other than that, thank you for watching. And if you're listening on Spotify, thank you for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.